anything. What's
going on? What the hell is going on?
At the moment, you're under arrest for conspiracy.
Who?
Holly Willoughby.
I think that was
That's the allegation.
For years, Holly Willoughby was one of Britain's most recognizable television personalities. Millions of viewers knew her as a familiar face on morning television. To the public, she appeared approachable, cheerful, relatable. But behind the scenes, an unemployed security guard living hundreds of miles away had become dangerously obsessed with her. What began as a fantasy would eventually evolve into detailed plans, online discussions, and preparations that investigators later described as terrifyingly real. Like many celebrities, Holly occasionally dealt with unwanted attention from fans, but authorities would later discover that one particular individual had crossed a line far beyond ordinary obsession. That individual was Gavin Plumb. Plumb was a man from Essex with a history of criminal behavior and previous encounters with the justice system. By 2023, he had become fixated on Holly Willoughby. Investigators would later uncover evidence suggesting that his fascination had developed into an elaborate and disturbing fantasy centered around abducting Holly from her home and keeping her in a dungeon for his perverted and sick fantasies. At first glance, such claims might sound like internet fantasy, another example of someone making outrageous comments online without any intention of acting on them. But as investigators dug deeper, they found evidence suggesting that Plumb's actions had moved far beyond words, and that discovery would trigger an international investigation. The story began to unravel when law enforcement became aware of conversations taking place online. Plumb would use a chatting app called Kik, where he explained to a man named Mark, whom we don't know his exact identity. He would explain to Mark the exact graphic details that he would do to Holly. Eventually, Mark was in on it, and he wanted to participate in that crime. In front of you is a video shared by Plumb himself on the Kik group.
Hands and ankle shackles, ring and ball gag, 3 lots of rope, metal cable ties, 2 sets of handcuffs.
According to evidence later presented in court, the discussions went beyond fantasy and included practical considerations, logistics, and preparations. After Plumb wrote some message on that group, there was another man named David Nelson, and he typed, "Nice." David would then have a private chat with Plumb to better understand what his plan was. The individual was actually an undercover law enforcement officer from the United States operating online. As conversations continued, investigators began gathering information about the extent of Plumb's intentions. The messages painted an increasingly alarming picture. Authorities later alleged that Plumb discussed potential methods of carrying out a kidnapping and shared details about Holly's movements, her residence, and possible opportunities to target her and her husband with the use of metal, restraints, and a sedative.
The only thing we're missing is somewhere to hold her. Right, plan of action. I'll give you a brief rundown. Basically, we're going to hit it at night. Less traffic on the road, etc. Chloroform both of them. That way then they can both be easily restrained. Pick out outfits of hers that we like. and then obviously take her and the outfits with us, and then we're gone.
The more investigators learned, the more concerned they became. This was no longer being viewed as idle online talk. Instead, authorities began evaluating whether a genuine threat existed. But eventually, the situation reached a point where action could no longer wait. Police moved in.
Police! Stay where you are! Do not touch anything! Move up to toe!
What's going on? What the hell is going on?
Listen to what my colleague's got to say.
Right, you're under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to kidnap. You do not have to say anything.
What is going on? What are you
Listen to
talking
what she's
about?
Not mention one question, something which led to lying for anything you do so may begin with.
Can you tell me what you're talking about?
Necessities for the arrest are to allow for a prompt and effective investigation by interview and to prevent any physical harm to the person. Okay, we'll talk about it back.
To who? Can you please explain to me what the hell is going on?
So, at the moment, you're under arrest for conspiracy to kidnap.
Who?
Holly Willoughby.
I think those are
That's the allegation.
Okay, where's that come from?
Like I said, it'll be explained to you in custody, and you'll be interviewed about it. I'm not going to tell you any further than that at this current time, okay?
Okay then.
But that is the allegation.
I'm not gonna lie, she's a fantasy of mine. I mean, she's a fantasy of a lot of guys, isn't she?
getting destroyed.
Mate, if you were knocked, I would have opened and spoke to you.
As you said, the reason
I was literally just about to go to bed.
The reason that they're going into that is because of the offence that you've been arrested for. We need to make sure that we can gather as much evidence as we can as quickly as we can. We've had to put the door in to secure the evidence. All right.
You've got no reason.
Gavin Plumb was arrested. The arrest marked a dramatic turning point in the case. What had previously existed as secret online conversations was now the subject of a major criminal investigations. Authorities seized devices, they examined their digital records, they reviewed communications, and they continued building the case. The investigation eventually led to criminal charges. At trial, prosecutors laid out their case. They argued that Plumb's actions represented far more than fantasy. The prosecution pointed to online messages, planning discussions, research activities, and physical preparations as evidence that the plot was genuine. According to prosecutors, the combination of these factors demonstrated intent, but defense lawyers challenged aspects of the case. They argued that many of the discussions occurred within the realm of fantasy and online roleplay. Plumb himself argued that he weighs 190 kilos, which is roughly about 420 pounds, and that he was physically unable to carry out such crime where he needs to jump a 9 feet high fence. This became one of the central questions facing the jury. But here is the thing, and that is when Alison Morgan, the lead prosecutor in this case, presented history of similar crimes that took place more than a decade ago. Mr. Plumb had made previous failed kidnap attempts between 2006 and 2008. She said the defendant had tied a teenage girl's hands with rope and tape, and in a separate attempt, he had attempted to force 2 different women off a train under the illusion that he is carrying a pistol, and he served time for both of these crimes. Ms. Morgan added the defendant knew what it would take to terrify and overpower a woman. As proceeding continued, jurors considered the evidence carefully. Ultimately, they reached their verdict.
Over a number of years, you pursued an unhealthy sexual obsession with Holly Willoughby that led you ultimately to plan over that period to kidnap to rape and to murder her. You researched her home address, her security arrangements, her daily routine, her route to work, her family. You assembled a restraint kit. You bought what you believed to be chloroform to incapacitate her and her husband. You intended to harm her husband and her children as part of your plan. You attempted to recruit several people to help you. You discussed with Mark and with David Nelson, and no doubt others, in hideous and revolting detail, the prolonged sexual violence that you intended to inflict on Ms. Willoughby once you abducted her and had her under your control. You had previously been convicted of terrifying offences involving the threat of sexual violence against 4 different young women. I found you to be dangerous. You solicited David Nelson to murder Ms. Willoughby or to assist you in murdering her. You encouraged Mark and David Nelson to participate in your plan to kidnap and rape Ms. Willoughby. The jury saw through the various lies that you told at the trial and convicted you of these offences, for which I now sentence you as follows. For the offence of soliciting murder, I sentence you to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years and 85 days. For the offence of encouraging or assisting the commission of the offence of kidnapping, I sentence you to life imprisonment with a minimum term to serve of 15 years and 85 days. And for the offence of encouraging or assisting the commission of the offence of rape, I sentence you to life imprisonment with a minimum term to serve of 15 years and 85 days. You may go down.
This story highlights a very uncomfortable reality. Most dangerous plots do not begin with dramatic action. They begin quietly. A fixation, an obsession, a conversation, and a plan. Step by step, what starts as imagination can gradually become something much worse. That progression is precisely what investigators watch for. Not every fantasy becomes a crime, but when a fantasy evolves into preparation, law enforcement pays attention. And in this case, they believe that line had been crossed. If you've made it to the end, I would love to give you a personal advice so that you're not responsible for, let's say, creating more criminals into this world. Raise your children to respect women. Look for signs of any bullying, signs of any violence that your children might be going through, whether it happened in real life or over the internet. The vast majority of these criminals are damaged people. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is born a criminal. Raising your children does not mean to only give them an allowance, to cook them breakfast, to buy them a car for their 18th birthday. It is much more than that. Your support to the channel motivates me to make more of these videos, to raise awareness and possibly give you an advice or two. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.